Plot questions are a bit tricky in a play because a play is a conversation. And it being a conversation, then the candidates have to do more work because they have to remember what was said. Since they are not actions, they have to remember what was said before. What did that person say? Because these questions, the answers are like this. Krogstad has been pleading with Nora to put in a kind word for him to her husband. That is the first thing before. Nora refuses. See, it's about what is said. It's not actions. Krogstad threatens to expose her, blah, blah, blah. Krogstad reveals that her problem is bigger. Being a conversation, then the candidates have to do a lot of work to remember what was said just before. And like the question says, it is just before, immediate. It is the thing that is said immediately before, not the thing that she or he recalls before. No, but what's said immediate. That word immediate is for real. It means exactly what was said before. So it becomes a bit tough for the candidates. So it will be up to us. It will be up to us to assist them in our teaching methods to get the plot right. And like I said, plot carries many, many marks. Let's not lose them. And I have another table here in which I have tried to analyze in order to help us with plot. We have the years. Now I have taken a 10-year study. We have the year on that side. We have the set book. We have the page from which the extract was taken. And we have the total number of marks, not marks, the total number of pages in that set book. And I've come to realize that except for 2 years, 2012 in red and 2017, but in all the other years, the excerpt has come from the first half of the set book. The first half. In most, the first quarter of the set book. So, it gives us a clue as to where to concentrate on in as far as the revision is concerned. We can concentrate on the first half. We will not ignore the rest, definitely not, because of the shock that might meet you. You may collapse when you see the last page. The last page. However, facts don't lie. And this is how it has been. And it has been quite consistent in the last 5 years. It has been quite consistent. And I believe that the rationale, once more, is that KNEC wants to accommodate even those candidates in the far out areas who either don't have a teacher, who has just reported and has read the first 20 pages of the set book with them, and here is the exam. So I believe that's the reason that KNEC does not go to the extreme end of the set books, but instead the first. So when it comes to revision, we can take a risk and bombard page by page the first half of the set book. And there get all the character traits, all the meaning of words in that first half. Get all of them. All the tones, all the attitudes, get all the stylistic devices in the first half. Because, God willing, we meet next year. We are going to talk about it. But if it comes in the last page, I'll not come. Kindly allow me. Kindly allow me not to come. I will have an engagement somewhere else when that time comes. But this speaks for itself. So that is something we could do. And then there is this last column that tells us the trends in the setting of question 3. And here, apart from 2012 again, 2013, 2014, where it was a bit erratic, the setting was erratic in question 3 of paper 2, where they brought 2 poems and a song in quick succession. Apart from then, moving forward, it has been quite consistent insofar as the setting of question 3 is concerned. What you do with that information is up to you. That is called a disclaimer. But it's going to help us to do a few things. Let's mention something about the meaning of words and phrases. And we know already that we must maintain the word class, the number and the tense. We must maintain that so that the question and the answer resemble in terms of form. They resemble. That is a must, like shown in those examples there. However, the other important thing to remember is for the candidates to use synonyms rather than explanations. Let the candidates not belabor, writing sentences upon sentences explaining the word elapsed in a sentence. No. Let them get a synonym. Let them get a word that has a similar meaning. That's where the mark is. The mark is not in the explanation. Like I said, marking is about high speed. So the time to mark sentences is not there. So rarely, even in the marking scheme, look at all of them. Rarely will you find an answer for a word or phrase as an explanation, as a sentence. It is always a synonym. And luckily, there are so many. The additions to the marking scheme for the word elapsed are so many. So it is very likely that your candidate will get the correct one. And tell them, even if they do not have a clue, they have never seen the word elapsed in their lives, encourage them to go back and check in the source, in the passage or in the excerpt, or oral narrative, whichever. The word is going to be in bold letters because KNEC is not testing eyesight. How fast you can look for that word inside that hole. It is testing whether you know. So they will leave it there in bold. Why do they leave the word in bold? It is for the candidate to go back and look at the word in context. And they can guess. Tell them when it's too hard. Let them guess. Let them guess. And write a word, whichever comes to their head. It could be the correct one. But a blank space will never score anything. No way. But they might write the correct answer eventually. That is quite important about words and phrases. Mood, tone, attitude. It is being asked these days in different ways. For example, last year, what is the position of the speaker on terrorism? You see, that is a different way of asking attitude. And instead of using the word attitude, now KNEC uses softer words. Again, I believe they are trying to cater for all the candidates that we have from all corners. What is the position of the speaker on terrorism? Explain your answer. 3 marks. The usual thing is 2 marks for identification, for tone, mood, attitude, 2 marks for identification, and 1 mark for the illustration. That is how it is. And we accept verbs, like you can see. He detests, he abhors, he dislikes, or of dislike. If you use a noun, then the word of must precede. Of hope, of determination, of, that is also allowed. We use adjectives for mood, tone, attitude, and then the illustration. The illustration, the best illustration, like I said, is the quote. That is the best one. Because the marking schemes also are in quotes. That's the preferred method of giving an illustration. Something that may save our candidates is teaching those words that are used to describe tone, mood, attitude. We need to have those words. I'm going to show them to you in a short while. Something else that will give us a respite is that tone has many, many answers, many possible answers, like I had mentioned. For example, what is the tone of this passage? This was asked last year. The tone of this passage. There are so many tones, so many. Here are 8 different tones. So your candidate cannot miss one tone. Cannot miss one. And we just need 1. 2 marks for identifying, 1 mark for the illustration. So you see, in almost every other different paragraph, depending on what is going on, that's a tone. You see, it is very easy, and that is why, luckily, tone is the one that is tested more often than mood. This was in 2019, the tone of the excerpt. Now not the tone of the passage, but the excerpt. Again, look at the many answers that are plausible. There are very many. So if we teach our students these, they will not lack one tone, one correct tone that they can identify and illustrate. Identify and illustrate. And like I said before, they can give as many as possible. Please remember that. It is not just for character and stylistic devices, but even in tone, mood, attitude, they can give 6 tones. 6. A tone and its illustration, a tone and its illustration. I'll look at all of them. All. That is a great advantage that we ought to take there. So I have these most common words for attitude, mood, and tone that I'll kindly ask you to carry so that you teach them. Teach the meanings of these words. Teach what they mean. And luckily, again, they are common everyday words. And they are the most common ones that appear in KNEC marking schemes. So if we teach them the positive ones and the negative ones, and they get to learn those words, they'll never fail this question on mood, tone, attitude. Because they'll have words that they can pick from. That's the trick, that they have words that they can pick from, many of them, so that it will be easy for them to pick a different word and a different word. The trick is in teaching the meanings of these words to our students. Now, the students from the fourth world schools, those ones, the ones that can hardly comprehend a thing. Nakuru Girls, you don't know what I'm talking about. Alliance, you don't know what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a student. I went to a school straight from Nakuru Girls High School to Mawingu Day Secondary School. And for the first time in my life, I saw a student report to Form 1 who had 96 marks. 96. For the first time in my life, I almost took a photo of him in order to put it somewhere. The poor lad could hardly write his name. When they are coming in, they would register at the gate. He took so long to write his name that it was frustrating. That student will not understand much of what you are talking about here. Tone, mood, attitude. No. But in order to avoid an E, and now that we know about identifying and illustrating, and the fact that they can write as many answers as possible, I'll keep looking. Train that student, the very bad one, that to remember as many character traits as possible. As many character traits. Leave, forget the illustration. They just cram character traits. When they are able to identify this question is character, let them list all of them. Let him list all those character traits, as many as he can remember. Ataangukia moja ama mbili, apate alama ya identification. Hatapata ya illustration. And we pray to God, wasiletewe ile swali ya 4 character traits, 4 marks, because that now requires both the identification and the illustration. Do the same for style. Let him remember all of them. See, this question is on style. Simile, metaphor, asiandike hapo. He'll score the mark for identification, not the other one. You'll avoid the E. That is the only way to do that, because those students are there. So it is not lost. It is not lost as far as that is concerned. Themes are require the IQE as well. It is about IQE still. This question was asked in, while the themes that were required were in the play. They are one and the same, but they didn't have to work very hard to get the correct answers. Themes require IQ or E. IQ or E. As many as possible still. Theme of stealing, those funny answers. Let them follow the ones you have given them in the notes. Those are the only themes there are. Moral lessons, there is something I need to mention here about the moral lesson. And morals are now becoming very important for KNEC and the country. That is why they're even very careful to get a set book like Blossoms. There are so many moral lessons to be taught. Those kids will be taught a lot by Rizian and her escapades. So, learners need to get something out of the moral lesson. Notice in red there, it says, the moral lesson must be a positive statement, yes. The moral lesson must be accompanied by a reason. This is something candidates forget. They assume that you don't illustrate the moral lesson. It must be illustrated. That's where the second mark is. Tick 1 for the moral lesson. Tick 1 for the illustration from the source. Those two things must go together. And then, if they decide to use a proverb, then that proverb must be accurately stated. If one word is not correct in that proverb they have chosen to use, then the answer is wrong. So teach proverbs and let them be stated exactly the way that they are stated. If not, you lose the marks. It is important to mention there in passing about the classification of a narrative. Those six are the only classes or types or categories of oral narratives that are recognized by KNEC. Fables and human tales are not correct. There are only those 6. Only those. And a narrative can belong to 2 or even 3 different classes. They just need to identify one of those correctly. Oral features in a song. This was tested way back. You never know. Oral features in a song or story. These are the ones that are expected. Rhetorical questions, idea forms, repetition, direct speech, fantasy, moving on. Those are the oral features. You can take that with you. That was tested in 2012. It's been a while. These days, The question on oral narratives is simply comprehension. They'll just ask you the class, the type of narrative. The rest is comprehension and character and style. And the way we have taught all those other things. So the next thing I'd like to mention in passing in poetry, a question that you may be asked yourselves about the deeper and surface meaning. And each meaning scores, but the deeper meaning scores higher marks. In a poem that has two different interpretations, there is a surface and a deeper meaning, a literal and a symbolic one, then the symbolic one has a higher score. If it was 3 marks, you'll score 3, and the direct one scores 2 marks. How does that help? It helps because the students may not sweat too much looking for meanings that don't exist. I'm telling you, we marked a poem entitled Touch. Touch. And we marked all sorts of things. That's how I came to realize that candidates struggle so much to look for meaning that they lose the fun in a poem. It's lost when they look and look and look. Wild interpretations. So let them not concern themselves so much with meaning, but with enjoyment. And that is up to us to do that, because it is in the enjoyment that they are going to get even the other concepts correct. And both interpretations score anyway. They will not lose out on both, even if they don't get the deeper meaning. So, moving on, those two poems, The Road Not Taken, 2016, and Sympathy, 2007, are good examples of poems that had 2 meanings, and you can look into them. We are moving to grammar as I close, and kindly teach these areas. They are the ones that are mostly tested. These ones. Yes, sir.
Before you go to grammar, oral narrative, poems, and excerpt. What is the penalty of using the wrong tense? For example, the question is what is, and the student is using past tense response, or when the question is asking what was, and the student has used present tense, and which tense should be used in the standard case?
Good question. Since the year 1999, that was the last year that we penalized for expression errors. We have not penalized for expression errors in this paper, except for grammar questions and the prose summary. In the other questions, in fact, my advice is this one. Let them not begin answering a question on character with that Nora is loving. Let them go directly to writing loving. Loving, a dash. They pick the illustration, write it there. Move to the next answer. And then the next. We don't mind how it is phrased. There is no penalty whatsoever. So we advise that you use as few words as possible. Because it is in the long words that they'll make a blunder, that they'll confuse the gender. So it doesn't matter the tense. No. In fact, let them avoid beginning an answer in that way that I've said. Let them give the answer. If it is the question on style, let them write simile. Not even there is use of, no. Simile, a dash, the example. If there is need for the effectiveness, next. That is what is marked these days. Otherwise, in 1998, that's the year they would take away a half a mark for every question that had an expression error. That's when you are considering wrong and correct tenses. Yes?
Okay. Maybe you can clarify whether the issue of listing all possible answers as far as the statistic devices are concerned, can it apply now to the passage where a candidate is in doubt that this might be the answer or this one?
The same applies. The same applies. Tell them to give as many answers as possible. As many as possible. The only limit is in the prose summary because there is a limit of words to use. The candidate who has written and filled the pages here is the one who scores the marks. But the one who writes one answer and then moves to the next, there is nothing there. It is okay for me because I'll move very fast. But the candidate suffers. And that is what we must take home, ladies and gentlemen, that this paper, you will score marks when you write many, many, many answers. Any other question? Yes?
In the question of summary, in a situation where I have something and I think I have in a situation where the first sentence doesn't go to the second sentence because there is no transitional value in a question of summary. You treat it as point. There's the candidate has been going forward. So finalize what happens.
Yes. The biggest crime that they make in the prose summary is when they are trying to reduce the number of words. The summary is asking for 40. In his rough draft, he has used 45 and wants to remove the 5 words. So what does he do? He removes the subject of the sentence, so that sentence is left without a subject. Then, in that case, that answer is not. That's a note. Right? So that is what usually happens. And the penalty will apply. However, about transitional words, the candidate doesn't have to use them. He doesn't have to use them. Because he can write a sentence and then write the next. The candidate can use commas. In fact, that is what the clever ones are doing these days. That the candidate uses commas. He ensures that the very first answer is a full sentence with a subject. And then the others are just commas connecting all the other answers. The entire summary becomes one sentence. The entire summary is one sentence. And the greatest penalty you can do is deduct 1/4 a mark for faulty expression, because there are too many commas there. So you'll only deduct a quarter a mark, and we don't deduct a quarter. So he goes scot-free. If there were 2 quarters, that's when you deduct a half. 3 quarters, you deduct a half. 4 quarters, you deduct 1 mark. So you see, that's not correct. It's not the right thing to do. But it is a way of beating the rules and getting away with it. So, I hope that I've answered your question, that the greatest problem is when they are trying to reduce the number of words to be like the ones asked in the question. They end up removing the subject of the sentence. And what is left is notes. And therefore, that penalty of multiplying by a half applies. I hope I've answered your question. Yes?
Yes. A quick one. In the classification of all analysis, minus fables and human tales, we are left with 6. But at times, even as teachers, we are torn between a set and trickster. Now, in that case, what does a candidate do?
Let him give both classes. Where a candidate is torn between whether this narrative is a trickster narrative or explanatory, let him give both. Because that's the goodness of this paper. In fact, if he gives all the classes, all of them, he'll get a mark. Because the type of narrative will fall among those 6. Let him write all 6. He'll get a mark for identification. It is impossible to get an E here. Yes.
In short, you are telling us that there is no wrong answer in this case.
There is no wrong answer in this paper. I'm telling us to write as many answers as possible. That is it. Of course, there are those that may be completely out of context. But I said the ones that they even suspect, the ones that the candidate suspects may be correct, but is not sure, let them write it. Even when they are torn between trickster and explanatory, write both. You'll still get a mark. Yes, madam.
So does it mean, for example, he's asked the type of narrative, then he likes to write a narrative, explanatory, 2 of them. But what about that?
Hata akiandika zote sita. We'll pick the correct one. That is the thing. And that's the distinction between paper 1 and 2. We pick the correct answer. We leave the wrong one right there. This paper is the most friendly in the curriculum, not just in English. Yes, madam. Yeah, it's the rules. It is how it is done. It is how it is done. That once they are done with the neat copy of the summary, they write the number of words they have used in brackets. That's how it's done. That's the proper thing. But they write it, they don't write it, there is no effect. Yes, they'll be doing just the right thing, and it's important, but it doesn't carry any marks. Neither does it carry any penalty. Yes.
Lastly, we have the text of dialogue. Dialogue is according to you and then but we have the little type of dialogue where when I say a word, I can go to support the skill against the dialogue. In order to have different that's next text. We accept dialogue when the other person supported it.
Dialogue is a conversation. It is a conversation. That is direct speech. Okay? That's direct speech. It is still a stylistic device. The other one is dialogue. It is the one when one person speaks and another one speaks. That's the distinction between the two. And both are correct as stylistic devices and as features of oral narratives. Okay? I'm about to close, and please teach these areas, and note that teach the skills, the concepts, but when you are setting, avoid using these words. In the MOOCs I've seen participles, I've seen gerunds, I've seen which other ones? Subjective, objective case, that I've seen very much. But KNEC rarely uses these words, for the same reason I keep telling you. Because of that candidate who has never seen the word gerund. It is going to throw him off. So instead they give them a task. Rewrite this sentence this way. Testing the same concept, but making it easier for the candidate. Let us try and do the same thing in our setting, but there are those words that are used, such as passive active, such as prepositions, such as removing ambiguity. Following sentences are ambiguous. Rewrite them, blah, blah, blah. But using those other difficult words just confuses the students, and that is not how it is going to be in the KNEC exam. So let us remember that. There is a popular phrase in marking that is called grammar is grammar. Grammar is grammar means that this is the area where we are very serious. Here we don't accept more than one answer. Here now the script has changed. Only one sure answer. If you give two, ensure that both are correct. If not, both are wrong. In phrasal verbs, use the corresponding tense. That is something candidates need to remember, the tense. Rewriting sentences carefully so that they don't leave out words unnecessarily. They don't misspell a word that is in the question. It's right there. You just have to rewrite that. And then you misspell it. Let them write even the full stops. This year, as we were marking, there is this question, number 4C, that had even specific instructions that we must remember. It said, in each case, rearrange the jumbled up words to form a meaningful sentence. Remember to punctuate the sentences correctly. Even the instructions had, remember to punctuate, remember to punctuate. So that one, hakuna kusamehea. Full stop is not there, it was wrong. Full stop, not there, wrong. Let's train them to do that even in the rewrites. Let them learn to write a sentence properly because grammar is grammar. In question tags, we must observe proper punctuation because there are these sharp students who will not put in the comma and then they get the same zero. That student who said, I am a student, student I, that one scores a zero. The same way that the one who said anti but left out a comma, the same zero. Not fair. So, I am a student, I'm anti such answers. Punctuation in conditional sentences is also tested. Reading the instructions, rewrite beginning or rewrite using. Those are two different instructions. The last note there says, there is that example, let's dash our clothes here. We have two options, hang, hang. And it is okay to underline, especially for those students who may make a mistake when they are writing hang here. Let them underline. It's allowed. Let them underline. Mr. Likuyani mentioned this. I'd like to emphasize it because it is so important. I remember he said that we even take a ruler, especially when marking the dummies. We take a ruler in order to measure the length, the height of a letter. Whether the first letter in the word is longer and therefore bigger than the next. If it is a capital letter, let the first word, the first letter, be bigger than the next for a capital letter. If it is a small letter, lowercase, let the first one be smaller. We don't check the next one. We will not say, but the next letter is big. That's wrong also. No. We are concerned with the first letter. Please check on that. And that's what we mean here. The letters in black have no major issues because the size is the shape is different. Capital A, small a, we can tell. The ones in red, in blue, let's begin with the ones in blue, are an issue because they have the same shape. And remember, we consider the shape and the size when we are determining capital and small letters. So, the ones in blue now, you need to make it bigger. Make it deliberately bigger if it is a capital letter, or smaller if it is a small letter. The ones in red have tails. The tails, when it's a capital F, it must stand on top of the line, the blank space. It must stand on top for it to be a capital F. For a small f, the tail must descend below the line for those ones there. That is so important that We may have to draw this chart and post it in our classes. This is what KNEC tests as I close, and this is what we've been saying about high mastery of content, proper interpretation of questions, writing answers to the required depth, morals learned. That is what we've been saying all along. And let's finish with the way we started. Ecclesiastes 9:10 tells us what? That whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. Those are the scriptures. With all your might. What our hand has found to do is teaching. Let's do it to the best of our ability, friends. And the reward is going to be there, I assure you. So, yes, madam. Is there a question? Any question? Yes. No, we don't penalize if a candidate writes an incomplete statement. We look for the answer. Yes. If the incomplete statement affects the answer, that's where the problem is. You'll get it wrong. So it's either correct or not. There's no other penalty in this whole paper apart from grammar and prose summary. Any other question? No other question. Thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you for being good students. I hope that I have said something that is going to assist your own students, and may God bless the work of your hands as you continue to help these generations. Thank you. God bless you.
Thank you, Mr. Njoroge, for that in-depth analysis of paper 2. And I hope each one of us have learned something today. Sindio? Better clap for the speaker of paper 2.